Welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast with big new ideas about credit unions and conversations about innovative technology with credit union and fintech leaders. This podcast is brought to you by Quillo, the real-time loan syndication network for credit unions, and by your host, longtime credit union and financial technology journalist Robert McGarvey. And now, the CU 2.0 podcast with Robert McGarvey.
Exactly what is Room 39A? There's one at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. You may have heard of that one, but today we're talking about Room 39A at CFCU, Community Financial Credit Union in Michigan, where past CU 2.0 podcast guest Tansley Stern serves as CEO. And she's launched this Room 39A as a CUSO that will offer subscriptions to its research. As for what exactly it does, CFCU's Room 39A describes itself this way: a place where possibility and the unexpected collide. We blend the precision of research with human imagination to unlock new ideas, products, strategies, and opportunities for companies and brands. Could this be exactly what credit unions need today as they battle with mammoth money center banks and fintechs with massive war chests? Just maybe it is. On the show is Blake Woods, a CFCU SVP who also serves as Chief Ideator at Room 39A. The episode explores the Room 39A approach to research, how it decides what topics to pursue, and why it believes the credit union industry very much needs the kinds of research it is doing. This isn't a propeller head show. Don't think it is. Quite the contrary. We dive deeply into gambling, sports betting, and also into questions about credit union sports sponsorship deals. It's cool stuff. It's relevant stuff. It's stuff that can make a difference for credit unions. Listen up. So let's start by, what is Room 39A? Let's define it.
Yeah. Room 39A is a CUSO that we founded at a community financial credit union and provide research and insights to the credit union industry. And our goal is to not just do research, but then spin up pilots where credit unions who subscribe to Room 39A can raise their hand and get involved and launch things at their credit union.
So there would be two groups. There would be investor-owner credit unions of Room 39A, and then subscribers who are essentially customers.
Yeah, as we're currently structured, it's wholly owned by Community Financial Credit Union. But yeah, we invite subscribers from any credit union to come and help us steer the research and then raise their hand for those pilots.
Now, if a credit union vigorously waved his hand and said, we want to be an investor, what would be the response?
I think, we'd be happy to evaluate that. We just launched this year, so we're still kind of early in the process. But yeah, I think we would, be interested in negotiating that.
I imagine task one for you is to flesh out what you're doing so it becomes clearer. If I'm going to invest, what am I investing in?
Yeah. We want to build, first step before even subscribers is building that body of research in those projects. So that's what we've been working on this year is just developing the topics and the areas of exploration. And we've got about, 12 white papers in our library at this point. So now we're kind of shifting from building to getting subscribers. And then I think investment is that final step.
Do you have a white paper on mergers?
We're working on one right now.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
I was doing some research a month or two ago for a client on credit union mergers, and I couldn't find a good current paper on it. I found some papers written by an academic, I think at Texas A&M, that were pretty good. I think they were through Filene.
Okay.
But they were like 15 years old or so. They were old. And the landscape has changed when you have First Tech and DCU merging. You go, oh,
right.
Wow, it's a whole new ballgame here. And I couldn't find anything that addressed that, nor could I find any paper that addressed the key question of, do you actually increase your business if you merge? You might think the obvious answer is yes, but from what I could find, that's not always the case. So, and what are the criteria there? So that's an obvious research need. What other kind of research do you see Room 39A doing?
Yeah, we're writing two papers right now. One is on that merger and acquisition and the impact that has both on the organization and the employees itself. Not to mention the communities they serve. The other topic we're looking at right now, we just published this last week, was grief and money. So exploring opportunities for credit unions to stand with members when they have the passing of a loved one. That ranges from, compassion and providing solutions of need in that point, all the way up to things like inheritance management.
And did you cover that at many institutions it takes months to actually pick up the money that the will says is yours?
Not just that, but yeah, we even did some member interviews for that research project and talked to some members who were recalling, periods of grieving. Heard things like, it took me a month to even get myself to a place where I could walk into the credit union and start to do that work. And then
Oh, sure,
to
sure.
find out that it's like a 20-step checklist, and every institution has their different list, and then, yeah, you're working with lawyers and wills, and it's very complex, and you're trying to navigate this in a moment of your life where you're, again, feeling grief and maybe not, at your best. And so, yeah, that's just an example of one of the topics, but I mean, wide range of topics, and that we've published today or that we have in flight. I'm happy to either give more examples or, yeah, just let me know if it would be helpful to run through
Yeah,
any
yeah.
more of
Give
those.
give one more example.
One more example. Let me think of my favorite one. We did one this year on decoupling, and it was around members who are going through divorce and, again, lack of compassion, solutions, process for members as they're going through that life event. We did two focus groups with members and non-members that were, had just recently gone through divorce or were in the process of that. So took all the gaps and opportunities that came out of that focus group and published a white paper with, kind of identifying where financial institutions fall short, um, potential for solutions in that area, and opportunities for partnership.
Well, I think if my memory's right, divorce and serious illness are the two potentially most financially devastating events in a person's life.
I think that sounds correct. And yeah, I mean, just the focus group, just hearing the amount of time and money that was spent, in that process. You had people that maybe had a life plan that got completely upended through this event in their life, right? And trying to, again, have more than a checklist, or I guess you just have to start over type solution for members is what we explored in that paper.
So what gap are you trying to fill? In
Room
other words,
39A.
why does Room 39A exist? Presumably there's a gap in the landscape. What is it?
Yeah, I think there is a gap in the landscape around research. You mentioned like your difficulty of finding, a white paper or at least one that was published within the last decade. And so what we aim to do at Room 39A is have our subscribers, steer us and say, these are the topics we want to learn more about. And we have the infrastructure built to quickly, set up those member interviews, those focus groups, and deliver insights. We do that in 90-day cycles, so that divorce or decoupling white paper that I mentioned, from the time we got the idea to the time we delivered the white paper and the solutions, we did a webinar, was 90 days. So that's what we aim to do, is just rapidly identify these trends or these opportunities for credit unions and deliver white papers. And we try to do it in a fashion that's easily digestible. These white papers tend to be 5 to 10 pages long. So, it may not look like some of the academic research that's often cited and out there. It's really meant for any leader in the organization to be able to take and quickly put something into action or make a change at their organization to address those needs, or like I said, raise their hands for the pilot opportunity that fast follows.
Did that white paper explore the role of the board in a merger?
That white paper is still being written on mergers. So we were just my call before this was actually we're still doing interviews, but yeah, we do.
Well, I'll give
We'll
you
offer that perspective.
a hint, and you can take it
Mhm.
or leave it.
Yeah,
But my research tells me that the wild card in a lot of mergers is the board, particularly in the acquired institution, not the acquiring institution, because they ain't
Mhm.
gonna have board seats. And
Yeah,
some of them will do anything they can to block that merger.
right.
So
Yeah, yeah. I've been through a merger. We would call it in the industry a merger of equals myself.
everybody says that. I'm an
Yeah,
old guy. I heard this for 40 years. It's never true. It is
yeah,
never true and never will be true.
yeah. And yeah, just you finished my story. The board the institution now. I don't think any of those board members from the slightly smaller credit union, remain through the merger. And so, yeah, even these things that are framed as like A plus B equals C tend to often not take that shape, and that's what drives the fear and I think the resistance. Sometimes even when a merger might be the best step for those two organizations.
Yeah, I'm not actually throwing rocks at the board members. It's just my
No, I don't.
research telling me that, wow, sometimes these people do everything to undermine it. It's, and is that executing the fiduciary responsibility of a board member? I'd argue it is not,
Right.
but that doesn't mean I'm saying let's get the handcuffs and throw them in jail. I'm not saying
No,
that.
no, I didn't hear that from you. Yeah, but
So
yeah,
when you
it's
talk about this with other credit unions,
mhm.
what's the reaction? This is something we need. Tell us more. What's happening?
Yeah, right now, it's been very exciting being at events like CU 2.0. A lot of feedback we got coming out of that event was like, yeah, this is just what we need. We're looking for insights that are digestible and actionable, I think are the two words that I hear most often. So we're excited about the early market feedback to Room 39A. And I think as we continue to build out not just our research library, but some of those pilot opportunities, yeah, we're bullish on the opportunity to grow within this industry.
I'm thinking, and I might be wrong. If you think about it, there are quite a few consulting firms that spend a lot of time looking at basically big banks. I'm not aware of any consulting firm that spends a lot of time studying credit unions. I guess Callahan, but they're more data driven. It's more narrow focus.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and Callahan, our first subscribers, so um, it's kind of interesting to think about that. But one of the things that their leader John Jeffries and I talked about was, the ability to pair qualitative and quantitative data. I think Callahan does a great job of, visualizing the call report and helping credit unions better understand, you know, um, how to leverage that data and make peer comparisons. And I think John's done a great job of elevating that organization to do more like on-site consultation, like you referenced. But typically, we see in our industry a lot less of that than we do, in some of our banking counterparts where, they're bringing in Deloitte or some of these
right.
kind of household names to provide that level of strategy. So what we aim to do is again, just that type of research takes a ton of work and infrastructure. We've got that built, and rather than have 4,500 credit unions all try to do that, can we come together collaboratively and do some of that research together?
Bring 4,500 credit unions together, and I don't think too much is going to result. To be honest, it's
Yeah.
argument, yes. You need someone to lead the way here.
Fair point. I think not all 4,500 will be in the place to receive value from the 39A, but I'd like to think whether it's BECU or Father Kramer Credit Union with three employees, that those that would be interested in identifying these topics and exploring them alongside of us, we'd love to return value to them.
And what kind of payment structure is there for credit unions that want to
Yeah,
access
we
the research?
we offer monthly subscription, and we have it tiered by assets. So for our smallest credit unions, those that are under 399 million in assets, it's 399 a month. All the way up to our largest credit unions would pay $1,500 a month. But yeah, we don't lock people into multi-year um, agreements, and we really try to position this as something like, give us a shot and let us be your insights department. Let us help you drive your strategic planning, your board offsites with content.
And that fee gets what? Access to all of the published research?
Yep, all of our research are recorded focus groups, and then they can raise their hand and take part in the pilots that we launch.
And I suppose you would welcome suggestions from them about topics, not necessarily that you would do them, but you would be interested in hearing the suggestion.
Yeah, our plan is to identify topics of exploration and allow the community to steer those through voting. So here's six topics for Q1 of 2026, and let us know where you'd like us to focus our research efforts. And that way we've got some ability to make sure it's important for us that we're not exploring things that are easy to find on Google. We really want to push the boundaries of ways that credit unions are helping their members, and push credit unions to think outside the box a little bit.
I would assume that you're also going to focus on topics that enough credit unions are interested in. For instance, are enough credit unions interested in cannabis banking? If I were making decisions right now, I'd say no. There's a handful that are. They're very interested in it. But 4,000 credit unions are running in the other direction as fast as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the same thing with crypto, which some people say we should be a heck of a lot more interested in stablecoin. Maybe we should, but it's going to be hard to convince credit unions to be interested.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. And what we do when we identify topics, we really lean on, our team, having Tansley Stearns, our CEO, attached to the project, having George Hoffheimer, previously of Feline Research. I feel like we have a good pulse on, what those issues are for credit unions. But yeah, the two you referenced, like both super interesting research projects, but probably too niche for us right now to focus on. So we haven't, done research to date on crypto or cannabis banking, those two examples you gave us. We're really, right now thinking about topics around standing with members in dark moments in life, and also trying to think about credit union interventions to help with cash flow, just given some of the economic constraints or factors that we see in the data right now.
Elaborate on that.
On the founder part.
On the cash flow issue.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when we're thinking about different research topics, one of the questions we ask ourselves is what's keeping credit union members up at night, or what's keeping credit union executives up at night. And I think a lot of credit unions right now, we've gone through a few years of balance sheet constraints and trying to help our members through times of inflation. And so as we think about, research topics, how can we help credit unions make a difference in areas of life that really matter to their members? Again, cannabis banking, it's super interesting research, but I don't think that's keeping the average American up at night. It's definitely keeping some Americans up at night, particularly those who work in that industry. But I think there's some more macro type issues that are worth exploring. The example I gave about divorce, there's millions of Americans that are going through that any given day. And so if we can provide a solution and some research there that can help the credit union movement better stand with members in that dark moment in life, I think that's more impactful. And that's why we've chose to steer the research in that direction.
Now, why isn't this work being done, or is it being done by America's credit union on one hand, uh, NCUA on another hand, Filene for a third example?
Yeah, I think some of this work is being done, and I just think more of it needs to be done. So on any of those specific topics, I'd have to do some research myself to see what has been published to date. But I think oftentimes, credit unions are credit union trade associations are narrowly focused on some of the issues on Capitol Hill, or credit unions themselves maybe focus their research into balance sheet initiatives and their own product promotions. There's so much um, on the plate of any credit union executive team, and so we're blessed to have an insights department here at CFCU, and it's my honor to lead that, one of the teams I lead here, and not every credit union is fortunate enough to have that type of in-house research going on. And so that's our goal at Room 39A, is to provide that for any credit union that's willing to raise their hand and join us, because we think it's table stakes. And if we're going to continue to evolve and meet the needs of the consumer, we need to be doing that type of first person research with those consumers and developing solutions on the backside of it.
What's the FTE count in the Insight group at CFCU?
I think that team has 5 employees today, and that includes both the qualitative and quantitative stuff. That being said, there's other individuals that don't work directly in insights that provide value to Room 39A, whether it's, the event planning and logistics, whether it's the marketing
Right.
of it, right? So there's additional resources, but yeah, we're hoping to continue to grow that group to be more robust, and I do think that's unique. We're about $1.5 billion in assets, 18th largest credit union in Michigan. So we're not the largest credit union by any stretch of the imagination. So hopefully that can help frame the importance of insights. We think at CFCU, listening is our superpower, and it's why we can be first to market in so many ways. We believe it's what gives us the edge um, when it comes to spinning up new solutions. And I shared some of those, I think, at the event you attended, where we've been, first to market and able to diagnose these issues and get a solution out there quickly.
For instance,
Gave the example at the CU 2.0 event around going through our transaction data and seeing the outflows that were going to gambling and sports books.
Yeah, no,
And then,
that blew my mind.
yeah.
And all I can
so,
say is that your members must be terrible, terrible, terrible gamblers, because they seem to lose more than they win.
yeah,
I mean, you're supposed to. The book lives on the middle. It's you're supposed to balance dollars up saying win, dollars saying lose, and in there, if you set the right line, there's going to be money for you. Whereas you seem to have a lot of people who just plain lose.
yeah. And maybe that's the performance of some of the local teams. But I think the bigger thing that plays into that, Robert, and I've done a bunch of research on this, is that a lot of the sports books don't incentivize the type of bet you're talking about, which is a straight bet. And it's so, there's minus 110 odds for this team. And,
The New York Times or Washington Post yesterday or today has a story about how so much of this stuff, you win there. It's an easy bet. You win. Then they say, okay, why don't you parlay this into something?
Exactly.
It's an impossible bet. It's absolutely impossible to win on the parlay. You have to pick like 5 things right.
It's really interesting social science. So what they're playing into is the same thing that drives people to buy a lotto ticket. And it's, winning $5 because you pick the Mets versus the Yankees is only so exciting. And through boost and promotions and um, other types of campaigns, they really incentivize their players to, yeah, string together three legs of a same game parlay or string together five legs of. And now when you look at the statistics of that, yes, of course, the pot and the chance to win bigger is there, but the likelihood of all those events and outcomes happening is dramatically less. And so that's
Might
why
as
you
well buy
see
lottery tickets.
exactly. Yep. And so
Someone wins that lottery sometimes. It's
someone
happens,
does.
but the
Those
odds
stories
are
go on.
astronomical. So
Yeah, and if you were to go on the FanDuel or DraftKings social media, they share the big stories of the big winners. Look at this guy; he picked these 10 games all on a Sunday from his couch, and now he's got $100,000.
he
But
was
what we're
driving
not
a
hearing
beat up
about,
2001 Nissan. Look at him today. He's in a Rolls
yeah,
Royce. How do you like
but
that?
yeah, but obviously the overwhelming majority of folks
They're still
don't
in
have
the
that
Nissan,
experience.
although maybe that's been repossessed too.
Maybe, yeah. So that's just one example again of where I
Now,
think we're
what
going to
was the
quickly.
point of that research? What were you aiming to do?
Oh, yeah, and that's the beauty of research too, is sometimes you can get started on one thing and end up in a completely different space. I was actually trying to look to see if there was a rewards partner that we could identify. I thought if we could like find a local retailer that our members seem to spend their debit card at, that we could offer some sort of promotion or incentive, cash back, with that retailer. But again, I was just shocked to see the the sports books and the gambling websites so high up the list on those debit and credit spends. And so that's just a great example of you're looking for one thing and the research takes you in a whole completely different angle. So yeah, we had no plans to launch a gambling alternative product or some sort of promotion tied to a sports team. It just kind of fell in my lap as I was researching something else. But again, having an insights and innovation department, we were able to kind of quickly spin up an idea, forge a partnership, get all the approvals that were needed, and launch something like truly unique in the market.
What was that?
That was called our One Pride CD, and so that was the opportunity for members to back the Lions in a no risk way. And so the rate started at 2%. Folks could invest as much or as little as they want. I think we had a $100 minimum on the account if memory serves, and we had someone invest a couple $100,000 in it. And every time the Lions scored the first touchdown of the game, that product's rate would go up 25 basis points. And so I believe both seasons we ended at 5.25%. But obviously a lot of fun along the way. And got to celebrate with our members, our local team here, the Detroit Lions, when they would score that first touchdown. They knew their rate was going up. And the beauty of the product was, again, even if the Lions never scored all season, they were still going to make that 2%. And so, unlike the sports books that kind of incentivize behaviors that are detrimental to your finances, we knew that everyone that placed a bet with us was going to come out a winner.
Yeah, I'm glad you elaborated on that because, as I said, I just read this article about the parlay bets that are unwinnable, as far as I can tell. I mean, technically, there is a way to win, but the odds are stacked against you. So
Yeah, I'm sure
that
they.
doesn't explain. So your bettors are not necessarily worse and stupider than other bettors. They're just betting on things that can't be won. So
There's a lot of behavioral science that go into why the sports books do what they do. And I can tell you, even from when we started on this research, the incentives and the promotions that are tied to these parlays and same game parlays with, again, a bunch of different outcomes that need to go right. It's night and day from where it was even 2, 3 years ago. It's honestly all you see when you open one of these apps now, and it's because they know that's the best business for them. There's only so much money to be made,
I
in a
listened
straight
to
bet.
I listened to some college football games on the radio,
Mhm.
and I hear these ads for sports books that basically says, "Hey, come on down to blah blah blah. You can have $100 free to gamble here." And I'm thinking now, okay, there has to be a real upside here for them. They figure I'm going to be such a fool that I'll just wind up spending $1,000, losing most of it. I mean, you're not going to give me 100 unless you're going to make some money on the back end. It's
Yeah, and those types of behaviors are like really where I want credit unions to be thinking more about, like what excites your membership today, and what brings them joy, what gets them checking those apps night and day, and try to redevelop your deposit product line to match that. And I think I gave this example at the event you and I were both at, but doesn't that's not exclusive to sports. You could think about um, things tied to the weather or just the flip of a coin. That type of chance and excitement is engaging and more engaging, I think, than some of the legacy products and services that banks and credit unions have offered that feel pretty stale to the to a large segment of consumers. So I'm not suggesting that we have our members put all their money into those types of accounts, but when you have those opportunities, specifically with like those local ties or partnerships, really think deeply about like what you can do to make that more than just a one-time transaction where they open up the account and never hear from you again. Like, what can you do to keep the member excited and checking back constantly and engaged throughout your entire relationship with them?
well, you're definitely onto something where there is all kinds of meaning in the data if you look in the right places for the right things. And I remember this was some years ago. I was having a conversation with a guy from a very big bank credit card issuer. And he told me that they were exploring in data to see if there were predictive factors that could tell them this couple is heading towards a divorce.
Mhm.
And I said, why? And he said, well, divorce is highly correlated with credit card default. So maybe we would reduce the balance available to them. Maybe, and he said this was all, it wasn't fully baked, but they were collecting the data to see if there were. So are you sending a lot of flowers to an address that's not your home address and not where your wife works? Okay, that might be a clue. Are you spending a lot of money in motel rooms in the same city where you live? Now,
Right.
that might be a clue. That's the kind of stuff they were looking for. And I don't know where it came out. He did say a concern they had was that their credit card holders would go ballistic at this perceived invasion into privacy.
Yeah.
Whether you were spending nights in motels locally or not, you shouldn't be doing that. This is like Orwell. It's 1984.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that concern, and I think there's a middle ground. But what I do know to be true is credit unions are not leveraging the data they have, and specifically the transaction data they have. I think it's a really um, telling um, data point that we all need to be considering in product development and campaign development. And yeah, you need to make sure you're good stewards of that. And, I like to say that let the data inform your hypotheses or your experiments versus reaching out to member A and saying, hey, I saw these 6 transactions and I'm making this assumption about your life. Maybe it can help you with targeting. Maybe it can make you feel more confident about bringing a solution to market like ours, something that's never been tried before. I think that's the way credit unions can better use that data and steer clear of some of those 1984 type concerns. You know, we didn't we didn't single anyone out and say, "Hey, we know you're sports gambling, so try this thing." But we did target that message to people that we knew had those transactions because we knew they were the types of members that would be excited by chance and excited by a partnership with the local sports team and maybe eager to try this new thing out with us.
What's the biggest credit union that you're participating with, or is participating in Room 39A?
Our the biggest subscriber we have right now is Callahan and Associates. So yeah, we're still looking for new credit unions to join Ring 39A and really hitting this budget season hard to start to build up that subscriber list.
Well, for a big credit union, the amount you're talking about is not a big deal.
Yeah, I think for us right now, it's all about brand recognition, just getting our name out there, making sure people know who we are, differentiating ourselves from some of the other research QSOs or entities that exist in the market, trying to even ourselves try to think through our evolution of where we can be most useful to the industry. So I do agree. Like I think our pricing is fair, and we were just talking about betting. I think we're asking credit unions to place a small bet on us, and again, not locking them into any sort of 5-year deals to do so. And so I feel confident that we'll pick up market share and really start making a big impact here in the industry yet this year.
Well, this is probably budget season in many credit unions, right?
I know it's in mind. That's what I was doing earlier this morning. So yeah, I know this is a prime time for us, and that's why you and I cross paths. We're definitely hitting the event circuit hard right now, and just introducing ourselves to the industry because you're right. This is the time to get into that 2026 budget.
So when you go to what other kinds of events are you going to?
Yeah, we've got a few coming up. We're going to be with a group called BD Now in Portland, May, October 28th to the 30th. And this is an event put on by Julie Ferguson. And we're going to be talking about forging partnerships. So getting out of the typical setting up a table and handing out tchotchkes, but really, how do you drive member activation through partnerships? So that same example I was just talking about earlier is a great example of a partnership we forged with our local Detroit Lions, and we'll be talking about that there. And then we've got Venture Tech coming up the first week of November. I believe November 4th to the 6th. We'll be down in Frisco, Texas. A lot of the Circle credit unions attend that event, and we'll be looking to share our story at that event and hopefully have a few new credit union subscribers coming out of our time in Texas.
So if I'm a credit union who's a subscriber and I say your sports betting thing intrigues me, would you share the how-to of doing the data search?
Definitely. Yeah. I've been talking about that product on stages for probably a year and a half now. And I really invite the industry to try things like that. At Room 39A, we're all about helping credit unions evolve and elevate their game. And so, yeah, there's no concern from me in terms of sharing the T's and C's. Those are out and available on our website, or even going through my process of how I uncovered that. I mean, I'll just share it with you here today. I just asked for a list of our top 20 or our top 100 retailers by spend for debit and credit cards. And I think if you're not doing that at a credit union today, like that's a great thing to do, whether it's relative to this project that we were talking about or just better understanding your membership. That's a really key data point and something I think most credit unions could pretty easily get to. But yeah, I think those are interesting moments specifically for, credit unions that operate within a single community or a single state. Like how can you provide rewards that are relevant to your members?
It's so hard to, and this is where research comes in. I did a podcast a month or two ago with a company called Prize Out that has
Yeah.
a cash back feature. And I asked them to put a customer on the show, a user of the card.
Mhm.
And they put a woman, single mom, factory worker in, I believe, Indiana. And she was talking about the joys of like having an extra $25 to spend at Walmart. And many people might say, who cares about that? This to her was massively important. It was this is the difference between buying herself a little treat and just spending all the money on her kids, which she was mainly doing. It
Yeah.
was like, and you hear that, and you almost want to cry. You say, I wouldn't have thought of that in a million years. But, and that's where research and focus groups come into my mind. You hear opinions that aren't in your own social circle, aren't in your own mind.
Yeah, I think that's a hugely important point. And, I think for too long, the banking industry has been shaped by the executives, right? And like their needs and wants. And I think there can be a real disconnect with the consumer. And that's why that type of first person research is so important to what we do. At CFCU, for instance, we focus on moms, teachers, and students. That's our target market. And I was a student half a life ago. I've not yet been a mom or a teacher, and so the idea that I'm going to design a product that's going to meet their needs is pretty far fetched. But that's why we regularly, get focus groups of moms together and we put product concepts or potential partner ideas in front of them to get that feedback. Would this be useful? Because again, just to your point, the things that you and I might find beneficial or valuable don't always match what the consumer is looking for. And so we really try to help credit unions have a framework of like how to facilitate sessions like that. We create kind of focus group in a box or kits and things that they can go and talk to their members with. Or like I said, if they don't even have the capacity to do that, we record our sessions and they're welcome to watch those and glean insights from them or take the insights that we elevate out of them.
How hard is it for you to do a focus group that produces relevant information?
I would say it was hard in the beginning, but like anything, you just get better, you hone your craft. One thing we've been blessed with is the ability to bring in outside experts, specifically early on, to facilitate that. I've actually participated in focus groups. I've been on the other side of the table, sat at research facilities and observed the way that they were facilitated. And again, having the opportunity to work alongside some of those experts, um, what was once a challenge is now kind of just second nature. And I always feel excited in the days leading up to a focus group because I know not only are we going to get the three questions answered that are really keeping us up at night, but we're also going to uncover three things that we never would have thought of. And sometimes the focus group about decoupling and divorce will actually yield an idea about cash flow or better financial education in the schools or things that weren't even on topic because the beauty of it compared to a survey is I can ask those 3 4 follow-up questions that are going to really get us to an opportunity.
Yeah, I've watched a few focus groups. I still remember one I watched. This was a video of a meeting. Watched this at the California Nevada League meeting, and guy was asking, it was just young people, early 20s. So, you interested in joining a credit union? Nah, can't. I don't belong to a union. Nah, I don't like credit. And it was just down the line. It was like so negative. I said, man, you guys got a marketing problem here. You got to recognize that this marketing problem is immense.
Yeah, that's a real problem in our industry. And I know folks have even toyed around with, is the name credit union more harmful than
That's why a
beneficial?
lot of credit unions are taking the name
You
credit
see
union
that,
out
right?
of their name.
Yeah. The if you really want to get brutally honest answers in a focus group, which is what I'm always looking for. I don't need, people to pat me on the back or say we're doing great if there's opportunity to improve. But we've done focus group with students, particularly like middle and high school students. Will give you the straight truth. They won't pull any punches, and if something, I'll put it in their words, is stupid or makes no sense or is a horrible idea, they'll tell you that, and they won't, feel any embarrassment or shame about being honest. So it's interesting to see, having done a lot of these now, how different groups sometimes you have to really dig in to get to what's helpful and truthful. Whereas others, like that example I mentioned with students, they'll just tell you right off the cuff.
Are you aware of any credit union that's taken your idea for that Detroit Lions CD and implemented it themselves locally? Not necessarily, hopefully not in Michigan, but
No, not in Michigan, not nationwide, and
I don't understand that because it's a good idea.
yeah, I
So,
think so too. I think, we've discussed how we could maybe put that in a box and try to socialize it. I have a lot of credit unions reach out to me and do, a 30-minute call explaining it. And I've spoken on, different stages talking about it too. But I don't know if it's taboo or if it's like fear of being associated with something that's quote unquote negative. But I've yet to see someone leverage that yet. But I do think eventually you're going to see a lot more of that. The industry's been talking about gamification and how do we reach the younger generation. And I think we're really onto something with that offering. So sometimes it just takes times for those things
I,
to develop or confidence.
I did a show 3 or 4 months ago with a mid-sized or small credit union in Ohio that actually has a deal with the Cleveland Browns.
Hmm.
And they have a branded card that's aimed primarily at kids. It's a little brownie card, I think they call it. It's and very popular apparently. So credit unions like deals with sports teams, things that revolve around sports. Some people think it's an excessive thinking about that, but given the popularity of sports, I'm not sure it's excessive.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some opportunity there, and for credit unions of all sizes, like how can you make this fun with the college in your town, right?
Yeah,
Or
right. Yes.
again, if sports aren't your thing, but you're in a community that gets 80 inches of snow, like some of our northern branches, like how can you play into that, right? Like there's a bunch of different ways to engage your members. And I think what it really comes down to is doing that type of listening and understanding, what are your members passionate about? Like what are the things and the causes that they're proud of, and then trying to play into that. If you're trying to like force it to a community that's not engaged with that team or that school or that cause, it'll only be so successful. If
So
you walk around
I'm a credit
Michigan.
union and I come to you and I say, would you do research on the costs and benefits of relationships with sports teams? And I want to look at
Oh,
stadium sponsorship, stadium naming rights, a co-branded credit card, and a third option that I can't quite think of right now.
yeah.
Would you do that? Would you be interested in that?
I think that's interesting research. Yeah.
Because a
I
lot of credit unions are exploring this, but they don't have a research basis to say, oh, well, here's the pitfalls, here's the plus side, here's what we need to think about.
yeah, and I think that's interesting research. And what I would hope to do through that research is add in some of that Room 39A flavor of maybe besides just slapping your name on a stadium, like what are other ways that you can embrace the passion and the energy of that fan base, maybe through your products or your event activations. I think a lot of times the only research that's involved in those types of negotiations, Robert, are coming from the entity that's going to collect your sponsorship dollars. And they're saying, oh, you'll have this many impressions, or, we have this many people that drive by the sign or the stadium every day. So that's why you should invest, this money. I could see a research paper there where you could look at the performance maybe before and after and measure, the impact that it has. The difficult thing in some of that type of research is many of these credit unions, that's not their only play, right? And they're building new branches. They're going through a merger. There's so many other variables, so it's tough to sometimes tease out like what is specifically driven by this single campaign. But I don't hate the topic idea because I do think there's many credit unions that are signing up for that. And again, I think you got to take it that next step and find those engagement points or those ways to align your products to those partnerships. I think that's like the real sweet spot.
Well, also, you could research the NFL, MLB, National Hockey League. They all have restrictions on what you can do, which might not be mentioned to you while you're discussing this and dreaming about, oh, we can do this and this and this. Well, that might be specifically prohibited. And I'm not saying anybody's conning anybody. It's just no one asked the question before they
Sure.
signed the contract.
Yeah,
Can
you're
we do
excited.
this? And you would have been told, no, you can't do that. But you don't ask, you're not going to find out. But if there were
Yeah.
research on that, it could be really useful because there's so much interest in this right now.
Yeah, there is. And, I think with any partnership, whether it's a naming rights deal or a smaller, type of partnership, you really want to find organizations that are um, kind of on the level playing field. If a credit union is sponsoring something and they're the 20th largest sponsor for that organization, but for the credit union, it's by far their biggest expenditure. Your priorities it might be the most important thing to your strategy, but if you don't have that alignment with the partner, you might not get the service, or you might get stuck in the legality concerns that you mentioned, and not being able to live that partnership as fully as you had hoped when you signed the deal. So, I think when we look at partners, we're always trying to find um, partners that are on the rise, because we believe we're growing and on the rise, and try to like find someone who's growth minded and walk that path with them.
You're right. And in many of these sports deals, this credit union gets the title, the official credit union of the blah, blah, blah. Now, what if Chase Manhattan Bank, JP Morgan Chase, is the official banking partner? Who do you think has more weight? Everybody's walking around saying, well, we're the official credit union. But that's a cool thing, but it might not be quite as important as you think.
But, that might translate into some smaller recognition.
In any event, to wrap this up, I'm a big fan of what you're trying to do. I do think the credit union industry has been hampered by an incredible amount of data, by a lack of incredible amount of data. And if it had an incredible amount, I think that would be a great thing. And they're making decisions flipping coins, which is unfortunate. Because the credit unions are playing against some big wealth research operations like the money center banks and many of the fintechs. These guys got research to burn.
Yeah.
And research will make a difference. Before we go, think hard about how you can help support this podcast so we can do more interviews with more thoughtful leaders in the credit union world. What we're trying to figure out here in these podcasts is what's next for credit unions. What can they do to really, really, really make a difference in the financial scene? Can't all be mega banks, can it? It's my hope it won't all be mega banks. It'll always be a place for credit unions. That's what we're discussing here. So figure out how you can help. Get in touch with me. This is rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Robert McGarvey. Again, that's rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Get in touch. We'll figure out a way that you can help. We need your support. We want your support. We thank you for your support. The CU 2.0 podcast.